Good morning and welcome to Property Quorum. It's that time again. Yes, 10 o'clock on a Thursday. It comes around so quick. There's always more to talk about in the old property market. Of course, I have to reintroduce you to our stalwarts, Hamish McLay of Convey, Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke, Chris Gilsenan of Route Home, and we're joined by esteemed other members of the Property Quorum, Zahrah Aullybocus, and of course Silas J. Lees, who you may have noticed often pop up on cladding matters and property matters. Now, today's topic is an interesting one. Well, they all are, and I'm going to throw, of course, Hamish straight under the bus. Can we use traffic lights to our advantage, Hamish?
Well, there was a subtitle to as well, who wrote the software. Now, this reminds me of a story. Many years ago, when I was a young man, well, yes, I guess I was really, I was invited to attend an office over in Reading. And I was taking some students over there to look into a computer and the use of a computer. In those days, it was fascinating stuff because it was all to do with the binary. And I love multiplying binary numbers together because you can't go wrong. It's just zeros and ones. So what the heck can go wrong with that? So in we go to this particular place. And this was at the time when computers were still the size of my office.
Apparently one day, Hamish, we'll have one in every city.
Oh, yes. Accordingly, that was going to happen too. I did get to work with one in Oxford as well as Reading. Anyway, going into this particular sort of one, we take all the lads in, we go. And basically what we had to do was to try and set up the control for a set of traffic lights. But we had to work the software. Now, nobody knew what the heck software was. Certainly I didn't. My students, who are much more talented than I, they were on site quicker at it and they worked it out quicker. But I mentioned the traffic light scenario because what actually happened at the end of the session, I was offered a position working for this particular sort of company. Now, they at the time were the foremost computer company in the UK at providing information to BBC because there was BBC and a bit of ITV at the time. So it was way back. And I turned around and said, that's right. I'm quite happy doing my teaching as I am. Now, we had the traffic light scenario then. What did I see in my traffic lights? Well, it was all steam ahead with teaching. Where could I have been had I changed my mind? So if you're able to write the software, you can do an awful lot of things with the traffic lights. But it was a follow-on from last week. We saw so many stoplights, I think, or there could be so many stoplights available. But really, does it matter?
Chris, a fellow geek like myself, you must have an opinion. Who's writing the damn software?
Is it worth the code that's been written in the first place?
Oh, contentious.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. I mean, haven't we got AI to write the software now? We seem to be in a much better position because of it.
I thought we've got AI to write the AI. Well,
it's very Terminator.
Yes. Quick call, Sarah Connor. Yes, go on.
No, we've been very thankful for some of the software developments that have happened over recent times. So they've been helping. Again, AI has been helping us on certain projects this week, fleshing out different parts of our business process. So it's been particularly helpful. So in that regard, I guess yes, it can be particularly helpful if you do apply it in the right way. But it's got some very, I guess, the garbage in, garbage out principle very much applies. So if you have to be very clear in what you're trying to define to get anything meaningful out of the setup.
Well, I recently asked Gemini to list everything that was going on in my business, and it added areas that I had no idea that I did. Silas, should we watch out for the traffic lights? Do we care who's writing the software?
Well, I think we should. I mean, obviously traffic lights provide a very vital function in society in terms of traffic harming and direction of traffic and flow and the ability for pedestrians to cross a road safely. and for traffic to merge from one lane to another. So in actual fact, yes, we should care. And I would imagine there's quite a lot of coordination, although it's completely out of my area of expertise. I would imagine there's quite a lot of coordination to get this the traffic lights working seamlessly to prevent accidents, pile-ups, and all the other negative scenarios.
We don't have negative scenarios because we're all such an ordered society, aren't we? Juliet, should we worry about the traffic lights, or should we just carry on?
Well, again, it's all about the sort of data inputting. I use the traffic light system, all the time for my clients. So red being something that, requires warning or paying heed to amber and green. And, often when I get searches from Hamish, you'd have, the traffic light system being used. And if I see 16 red warnings, I actually say to my client, do you want to buy this? Do you, there's a lot of warnings, which suggests to me that there may be a lot of costs involved in terms of rectifying those things that I'm being warned about. Now, I've seen warnings that aren't really warnings from a legal perspective. So it really depends on who's looking at the data, who's inputting the data, and who's interpreting it as, within the traffic light system. But it's really, really handy. And so for me, sometimes I report to lenders, for example, and I give them a red, green, amber sort of listing of issues, and they can actually tell from that whether or not they're ready to fund a deal or how far off a development might be from being finished, etc. Often when you get reports from the QS, it's that's a quantity surveyor or a monitoring surveyor, you get the red, amber, green ratings on there. So traffic lights are a brilliant way of sifting information and actually putting them into certain brackets. But it really depends on who's sifting the information, who's inputting the information. So if it's AI that, just might not be able to discern 100% accurately where something might be placed, then you still need a human to review and to report on. But it's a brilliant system.
Zahrah, welcome. Using traffic light type systems sounds to me like you're effectively summarizing, and then we summarize the summary. Does that mean we end up losing all detail?
Oh, I don't know, because what I'm seeing at the moment is that I'm going red light, stop, and people are going, I don't care. I just want this. You do what you have to do to get me my property.
Good Lord.
They just don't. They don't want to know. They've got their hearts set on the kitchen. They don't care if they're going to be hit with a bill for 40 grand in 2 years' time.
That seems nutty, though. Do you think that is almost an allegory for modern life? People are forging ahead without ignoring all the bloody signs.
Yeah, because everybody's just in their own bubbles. They've got their own AirPods on, and they've put the noise cancellation on, so they don't want to hear anything that's going on. And I literally had a conversation with a client yesterday about buying a new build flat, and he's like, yeah, but that's the only thing I can afford. I can't get lending as a company on a commercial property. It's got to be a new build residential flat. And I'm like going, well, do you know about all of this stuff that's going on? No, but I don't care. I want to buy this because it's the only thing that I can do at the moment.
I'm going to go straight back to Juliet. Juliet, are you hearing this same sort of thing where clients are you're warning them, look, it's umpteen red lights, and they're going, yeah, whatever, make it go away?
Well, that is the thing. I think if you've got the right legal representation or whatever it is, if it's, Chris has put a comment there about people overusing, the red in the traffic system to cover themselves. And that's a big thing. The PI exposure is huge. And a lot of professionals, because they're doing bulk reports, etc., to cover themselves, they mark everything as red. But, I always suggest solutions. I do a risk analysis, and that's what it's all about. But that's what you pay for. You pay for the risk analysis of the traffic light system. So I'm not necessarily seeing people wanting to proceed nonetheless, but there is an expectation, especially when you're on the lender side, to find solutions. I act for subprime lenders. The majority of them are not high street lenders. So people come to us because they can't get a high street loan. So the expectation is that we've got loads and loads of reds and we've got to find solutions to those reds. So for me, it's almost an expectation to have the reds, and it's an expectation on their part for us to find solutions to move those reds to greens. You know, at the end of the day, what people want is to be able to, or lenders, they want to get their money back, or if they repossess, they want to be able to sell on an open market and have the property open to as many buyers as possible, not just limited to cash buyers. So ultimately, I look at those reds, and there are sometimes things that we just can't find solutions to. And it delays a transaction because somebody's going to have to give somewhere. And that, you know, negotiations, variations, releases, those things take time in terms of when there's a red warning. So what I'm seeing is a lot of expectation to find a solution. So that might be just an extension of what Zahrah is saying, where people are saying, I want it. Because, you know, even if they're saying they want it and you've warned them, I can guarantee that if in 2 years' time they suffer loss as a result of that thing that you've warned them against, they're going to come knocking on your door saying, I want to claim on your PI, or you've made me do this. You should have warned me even more than you already did. And so we've got to protect ourselves. And so going back to Chris's comment, this is why monitoring surveyors, etc., are covering themselves by putting so many reds on. And it doesn't really help the situation. But I get it. And that's probably coming from their PI insurers saying, look, you've had so many claims against you. You've got to, you've got to protect yourself. So mark the majority of it as red.
Surely, if we paint the town red all the time, Chris, and we're just covered with false positives, we'll end up ignoring the whole damn shooting match.
I think the devil's in the details. So I don't mind all the reds. I read between quite a few surveys on a weekly basis, and I just see so much cut and paste in those surveys. It's like, well, yeah, you're just blatantly trying to cover your own arse. There's no need to go to this level. It's like, well, I've looked at the roof and it looks okay, but it may be a problem. It's like, well, what is it? I'm asking you your professional opinion. Don't just say it may be an issue and I need to investigate further. I'm paying you quite a large chunk of money to tell me that. So I'd rather pay a little bit more and have the exact detail that I need to be able to progress or give my client some sort of peace of mind. And lots of the surveys that come through, they're very, very ambiguous, and we do focus on the reds because we want to make sure that the property is in a habitable, safe, watertight condition. And obviously that the reds are the priority in those surveys. So we're going to pay the most attention to these items in red. So don't give me a report that's full of ambiguity that I then have to go and either go to a further professional or do what I would have done anyway and send the builders and get them to quote. But then if I even shared that report with them, the bill would double. It's absolutely wild. So it's just full of I need clear information to be able to make clear decisions.
Zahrah, as you mentioned earlier, the plumbing and electrics always flagged in home buyers. What is the point of a report that is just painted in claret?
I don't know, but whenever you see a home buyer survey, because surveyors don't check the plumbing and electrics, they always flag that as red, and so you get a lot of calls from clients who are panicking, going, "Oh my God, where are the certificates for the boilers and the electrics?" And 85% of the time, you've got people that have lived in the property for years that don't have any certificates, and they just say it works. What's your problem?
Yes, that works most of the time. I believe that works particularly well on shuttles and things like that. But yes, so Silas, if I could summarize, we've developed an ever more worrisome society where everyone's going to cover their own asses by flagging things up. There must be a problem. I can't tell you what it is, but there's bound to be a problem there. How can we rely on these reports to give us, as Chris wants, a clear, accurate view?
It's a really interesting scenario listening to everybody, and I think the thing that I've observed quite a number of times is when you're sending somebody into a property, particularly a surveyor, they really need to be accompanied as a team. So you really do need the specialist to look at these other areas. I mean, as a homeowner, when you're living in a property, as Zahrah's just mentioned, there will be things that go on that you kind of live with. You don't necessarily have the central heating service every year. You don't necessarily have the electrician check the electrics every 10 years unless there's a problem. But as a surveyor, there is a liability that you're putting your neck on the line to say that the property is right. So it's getting over this liability issue. And I think that if you were going to do a comprehensive job, if it was 500 quid for a home buyer's report with a surveyor that's full of red lights, or 750 because you've got a electrical report, you've got a gas safety report, all together with the same thing, that I think would solve a lot of these headaches, because the surveyor could lean on that professional opinion of the other professional, and of course you're then transferring liability to say, well, I took the electrician's word for it, they gave me this full report, and they know what they're talking about, whereas I don't, because I'm looking at the fabric of the building.
Hamish, good Lord, where we're at?
I mean, in some respects, I mean, it is down to how people operate this sort of whole thing, I believe. They're just an interesting sort of comparison. We have several chimneys in our house. I had a chimney sweep come in earlier this week, and unfortunately, I was busy doing bits and pieces, and so I wasn't anywhere near the chimney sweep. Apparently, he came in, and one of the biggest chimney used to be a very, very big oak fireplace, and we've actually put a log burner inside it, which is really, really good. And apparently, the chimney sweep walked in there and said, "What's that material there?" And my wife says, "Oh, I think it's asbestos." Well, of course, it couldn't be asbestos because we bought it only about 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, "I'm not going anywhere near that." Anyway, he refused to actually do anything with his chimney. And we get this report. He's condemned our chimney now, saying that with asbestos and sort of stuff like that. And so you think to yourself, well, hey, hang on. He didn't even check it. He took her word for it. And not that he was an engineering expert or anything of that particular nature. Had he spoken to me, it would have been different. But I'm not. I'm not attaching. But the situation is, he could have looked at that a little bit more closely. It's a bit like if you're out on the road. Depends what vehicle you happen to be in. If you've got red lights there, if you happen to be on a cycle, a pedal cycle, you can get off the darn thing. You can ignore the lights. And you can still go across the pedestrian crossing to get there, across there quicker if you like. So it depends on the vehicle you're in. I do like the traffic light system. As Juliet said, it can be absolutely superb, but it's a great, great warning. But we've got all of this stuff that's sort of going on. We've got some really tremendous reports sort of coming out, particularly environmental reports. And there is an element of kind of people saying, well, I don't know what I'm not an expert on climate change, but you don't need to rely on that because the experts have put the information in there. So as Chris has actually sort of said, you've identified these experts. In fact, it was Juliet as well. If we're getting all of these different sort of people, it's Silas too, if we're getting these experts to look at it on our behalf, it's by far the safest way. And of course it does. And the trouble is it doesn't help, as Zahrah says, and this poor old soul there, I want it. It's the only thing I can afford. And they're not thinking, they're just thinking emotion again. Emotion is involved with it. Let's just get hold of it. So there's a big, big mixture there. There's a big, big mixture. Traffic lights are very good because they're basically warning lights, effectively. Hey, you're okay, just go straight ahead. Even so, I don't think we would actually sort of leap ahead necessarily if there's a blooming great sort of tanker or something coming across the other lights. So be aware, that's all it is. And I think it's buyer beware still. And this is where the likes of Zahrah and Juliet come in there, and they'll turn around and say, hey, look, our advice would be this. But they make the final decision, don't you, the client at the end of the day.
Well, in a world where a series of red traffic lights can sometimes mean go, 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 I am ever more of the belief that you need to develop relationships with specialists like the assembled here who will actually tell you the truth rather than trying to cover their rear ends with an ever increasing series of generalizations. It only remains for me to say thank you to Hamish McLay, of course, to Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke, Silas Lees of Wigwam, of course, Chris Gilsenan, and thank you, Zahrah Aullybocus of Nexa Law. So all I would say is try and keep your feet on the ground. There is stuff to be had. You just got to know who you're talking to, I guess. Build those relationships with people who are actually going to tell you the information you actually need, not the generalizations you don't really need to hear. Until the next time we meet, I wish you all a wonderful weekend, and of course, look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.